cars I didn't expect to be covering. Dacia Duster. This one's a Laureate, a 1.5 DCI. So it's pretty well spec'd. And it also has the nav upgrade option. Just funny they never went for any of the exterior styling package or indeed the leather interior, because the leather interior for these things is ridiculously cheap. And it's actually pretty good. But yeah, they never saw fit to do that in this one. But anyway, let's have a closer look. It's better than you think. Let's start off with a couple of interesting to note things. So the first is that this particular Dacia Duster is a 2015 model. It's only $7,000 and it's a Laureate with navigation. You don't get much better than that price-wise. So that's straight away a very positive thing. The other interesting thing is the fact that these are actually built in a Renault Clio. You wouldn't think it by looking at them. But everything starts to make sense when you look at the steering wheel, when you consider the proportions, and you consider this key. This is a Renault key. I know because my Primus Star is essentially Renault Traffic and also uses this key. So yeah, it's just cobbled together from bits of Renault, really. Having said that, they've pulled that off rather well.
So what's the specs on this car? Well, it's the 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel, generating 90 or 115 horsepower. I can't remember which one this is. I think it's a 115. Because it's also four-wheel drive, and that's an interesting point in itself. So far, there's a 6-speed manual only. There's no automatic version. I would imagine it'll come in time. The overall styling is not what I would consider pretty, but I didn't get instant twitchy eye because it was so ugly. So I guess that's something to know as well. And strangely, considering it's built on the Clio, I didn't really find it too ill-proportioned. It doesn't look like they've had to cram too much. I want to take this time to apologise now for the outrageous reflections I've been getting in bodywork in the last few videos, and the fact that it's obvious on the camera placement. Sorry about that. Well, let's talk more about the car and less about my appalling camera work, shall we? Dacia's design philosophy appears to be no-frills simplicity. The steering wheel, for example, only has 4 buttons on it, and they're small, quite subtle. The gear lever is tall, like older small cars from a simpler era. The steering is light, but not so light that you feel like you might accidentally put in slightly too much input. It's certainly high off the ground, but it doesn't feel like it's too high. It feels like it's about right. You've got quite a commanding position, but without feeling like you're driving a tank. At this point, I was starting to develop quite a bit of respect for what Dacia have managed to pull off with a limited budget.
Something simple to notice here, the fuel cap filler is enormous. Look at the size of that. I don't know why it needs to be that big, but it is. How about these door handles? I quite like the fact that they're different. Yeah, that's good.
Well, let's get on to the interior. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the rear and front door cards, which I'll explain in a second. There's no rear door pockets. The switches and door handles are a little bit simplistic, but I guess, you know, on a cheap car, that's not where you want your money to be spent. But at least it gets rear speakers, and the fact that it's got rear electric windows is also pretty good. I would imagine, you know, to cheapen a car, you would probably put winders in or something. But anyway, the front one has this lovely triangular insert, which I quite like, and that matches the seats on this model. The seats might be cloth, but at least they're trimmed relatively well, and they are quite comfortable. The little Duster logo is a nice touch, I guess. I don't suppose I have to mention that they're all manual adjustment, do I? A lot of car companies will try and cheapen out by just having a horrible plastic steering wheel. Thankfully in this, that didn't happen. And I'm a huge fan of any company that actually does it this way, because higher miles always result in these steering wheels disintegrating in your hands.
I was just fumbling around looking for the cruise control when I found this little button over here and I pressed it. And no, it's the horn. Why is it there? Why is it not on the steering wheel? That makes no sense.
I like the simplicity of the dials. The little LCD screen on the right hand side gives the information you would want. The only thing I object to is the little bars to indicate the fuel level. I never liked that in my Primus Star either. The dash has strangely shaped storage areas, which I guess are still useful. The circular vents are nice, and this one has the nav upgrade, as I mentioned earlier, which I wish was just standard. It's not bad. It's a little laggy sometimes, but most of the time it works really well. I think LG manufactured it, if I remember right. Placement of the hazard switch is a bit weird, but okay, I'll go with it. And now onto the climate control unit, which I thought was interesting. It's sort of old school, but with a partially modern flair with its large numbers on the dials and things. I don't know, I quite liked its retro look. Of course, then underneath that, you've got the 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive selector, the 12-volt sockets, and a set of weirdly shaped cup holders that don't really hold things all that well. Yeah, kind of disappointed with that. But anyway, if we zoom out, which I will in a second, there we go. The giant gear stick I talked about earlier. It's a bit oversized, but it doesn't do it too far wrong. That's the electric mirror adjustment. Why is it there? That's a bit of a strange place to put that. I guess it works. Traditional handbrake and a single large cup holder at the back, which is a good size. Glove box test, well, it's okay. It'll do. I have no idea what this does. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me. Well, this is very familiar. This top light is exactly the same one that's in my Primastar, and it's probably shared across a range of other models. Okay, legroom in the back ain't bad. It's slightly better than the A-Class I did recently. The rear seats are just as comfortable as the fronts, and you notice they've got that interesting net there on the back of the seat, which I quite like. There is no armrest on the back seat. Again, I shouldn't really be surprised, you know, after all, an entry-level car won't have these things. But the transmission tunnel is really small for a 4-wheel drive. I liked that about it. Dacia were known for something sneaky, making their steel wheels look a bit like alloys, but nope, these are actual alloy wheels. That's a good thing. So now we should take a look at the amount of luggage space it has. But first I'll point out the fact that when you're looking underneath for the little button, it isn't there. You push the key slot in. That's very old school. There's more space back here than I thought there would be. And it ain't half bad. This makes this pretty practical. No 12-volt socket though. Now look at this for impressive. That's a full-size spare wheel. When Dacia were cheaping out on how to build this thing, they didn't cheap out where it counts. All the important stuff is still here. I can't stress that enough. Well, in the engine bay it's not pretty, it looks a bit cluttered, but that doesn't really matter. What's important is that everything is clearly labeled when it comes to fluids. There's a gas lifter in here. I mean, that's just amazing. And the battery's easy to get to, so really I just can't get over this gas lifter. I mean, you know, most cheap cars just get a little bar you stick up, but no, Dacia again didn't cut corners where it counts. So anyway, Dacia don't yet do a 7-seater in the UK. They do in other places in Europe, and I have seen them here visiting with foreign plates, but we still don't have it yet. I think when Dacia eventually, or if they eventually decide they're going to release a 7-seat version in the UK, I think it'll sell just as well as the Logan MCV and the Duster have done previously, even the Sandero. So I would watch this space for that, and I really hope we do get them at some point, because there are lots of individuals out there and families that can't afford to go out and buy the new fanciest cars at 50, 80,000 pounds a pop. They need something entry level that they can afford to buy that's still good. So I'd be more than happy to see one of those in the UK market, considering how good they've made a job of the Duster. So in summary, this is a practical car designed by a practical mind. The cost savings were made in places that didn't really matter too much. You're not going to get an electric tailgate on this. You're not going to get full electric seats. You're not going to get all these frivolous things that really don't matter that much. What you do get is a rock-solid car for not a lot of money. Well, a lot of the cars I've been looking at recently have been better than I initially thought, and the Duster was no exception. So anyway, like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you saw. Check out some of the other stuff we've made. I'm all over the place in terms of different cars I'm doing. I'm just doing whatever I can get my hands on. Hopefully I'll have some more imports for you soon, but for the minute I'm just getting in whatever I can grab. Anyway, until next time, look after yourselves.